welcome to everybody behind the screens, to everybody here in the room, which is not so many because we are not allowed to. We have to be very careful. But first of all, a warm welcome to you, Wayne Modest, Director of the National Museum for World Cultures here in Holland, which consists of 5 different museums. And we're partners in crime today. We're partners in crime since a long time regarding this project, and I'm very happy that we can stand here together today. And we just made up before that we have a spontaneous dialogue with each other, and we will, every now and then you will say something, every now and then I will say something, but it's very much like happening here at the spot. We're the 2 directors, we're the hosts of everybody today, and Wayne, it was a good and it was an important what we went together as 2 museums, working on this symposium, but also working on this exhibition. And maybe to go back a few more moments in time, because the exhibition is of course a collaboration with the Statens Museum in Copenhagen. And the exhibition will travel also in another form, in a somewhat different form, to the Brücke Museum in Berlin later this year. It's an exhibition which started to come into the minds of the curators who are responsible for it about six years ago, I would say. And the 2 initiators were, at the end, Beatrice van Boorman, curator at the Stedelijk Museum Amsterdam, Dorte Agersen, curator at the Statens Museum in Copenhagen. I stepped into the project much later, only 2 years ago. Wayne stepped into the project at some point of time in the reflection group. But maybe Wayne, the beginning is interesting. And how were you getting into this group, and what was your first opinion about this idea of stepping into this exhibition?
Well, no, first, thank you, Ryan, and thanks for inviting us to be part of this. These kind of collaborations are important for us to step outside of our regular day, regular way of working, regular way of thinking. And with our 2 museums located here in Amsterdam, we are 4 museums, but the Tropenmuseum located here in Amsterdam, it provides a kind of uncertain ground on which to operate, that one doesn't necessarily know as much as one thought one would have known. So in the beginning, when Beatrice invited me, and I must admit that these conversations happened a long time ago at a coffee in the cafe at the Tropenmuseum when the idea was raised that this would happen and that our participation she would like our participation in this. But one thing that I'd like to hold on to here is that 6 years ago, it's interesting that you start an exhibition and thinking about an exhibition like this 6 years ago. One could suggest that we would not have known what the political moment would have been like when you open. We would not have known about COVID, that is true. But also the exhibition opens up a certain kind of prescience for thinking about how the colonial has its afterlives in the present. And 6 years ago, I want to congratulate you on that kind of prescience in the beginning. Over to you.
That's exactly right what you say there, Wayne. That's very envisioning in a way, and I like this idea of coming up 6 years ago with this idea. Of course, the concept changed also gradually during those 6 years, and of course we're in a situation now which is for us very interesting also as a museum, because when we opened the show about 2 months ago, or a bit more than 2 months ago, we were expecting that there would be some reactions coming to this exhibition. And there came reactions to this exhibition. And I think that those reactions today are different than they would have been 2 or 3 years ago, probably, because the situation was developing, and the way people react to these kinds of topics and this kind of decolonization policy taking place in the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art and Design is different than a few years ago. And when we opened the exhibition, the first day after the opening, we had the first critique coming in, and there came some more critiques, and they were pretty heavy, I must say. And this gave us some thinking material, which also is part of the discussions we will be having the 2 days, today and tomorrow. It was, I wouldn't call it a shitstorm, but there was some pretty harsh remarks going on about this exhibition. One critique ended with the words, "This is the end of the art museum. This is the end of a museum for modern and contemporary art. This is another museum. This is turning into another direction." And we could read in the article also that the visitors were not able to see the beauty, the quality, the aesthetic quality of the work of Kirchner and Nolde anymore, of those 2 great painters, which were the starting point of this exhibition. And another critique ended with the famous words, Barbertje moet hangen, which is a Dutch literary icon in a way, and which is all about canceling culture, and which is all about the idea that we are trying to cancel 2 artists. Well, there are 2 remarks from my side to these 2 to these 2 critical views. The first one, that we as a Stedelijk Museum, we are here to state the end of the art museum. This is not right. This is completely wrong. And I'm very much, and I say it by all my heart, that this is still an art exhibition. And this is very much an art exhibition. And when we think about what we see in the exhibition, and you will, in short time, you will have the online guided tour through the exhibition, you see a lot of artists in this exhibition. You see not only 2 artists in this exhibition, you see also a lot of outer European artists in this exhibition. And I haven't read a word about those outer European artists in these critiques. I read it a bit and I interpreted it a bit as if we're only talking about Kirchner and Nolde. And we're not only talking about Kirchner and Nolde, because we are speaking about different hierarchies. We are in a way also, and that was something which came very much out of the discussions with the reflection group, Wayne, we started to come also with a reversal of hierarchies every now and then. But this does not mean that we want to end the idea of an art museum. But we want to broaden the idea of an art museum, and we want to say something from a perspective of today about our modernist past.
But I'd like to do something else, Ryan, and that is why this was a discussion. Because I want to invite you to think that comment less as a critique and think that comment as a horizon of possibility. Because perhaps what the critique was suggesting is that the exhibition, and I'm not so sure I would say this, I being the critical person I am, I can critique the exhibition itself. But I want to invite us to think that perhaps in that critique was this suggestion that it is the end of the art museum as we've known it. And it invites us to imagine another kind of art museum for the future. And perhaps that's one of the things that we in our museum are not so afraid or concerned about this anxiety about wokeness. Because perhaps in those kinds of spaces is the invitation to be otherwise. And if it is anything that your exhibition tries to do, but also that the last years of critique has tried to do, it is to invite us as museums to be otherwise. Because what they are suggesting perhaps, so I know you're right, you know, these kinds of journalistic forays can come over as being so, sometimes perhaps a little bit even simple, but I always like to look for the deeper part of it. And I think that a celebration of that journalist by suggesting, yes, it is the end of one and the beginning of another.
Well, that's great that you say that, Wayne. And that's also our development when we started to receive those reviews. And And by the way, there came also a lot of other reviews, which were partly reacting to the first reviews, and there came a lot more balance into the whole critical review of the exhibition at some point of time, and especially the visitors' response was very high and was on a high estimation level. So I see what you mean, and I also know that and this is the question, we always have to change. The moment we start to work in a new institution, we have the assignment to transform. We have the assignment to change, and we have the assignment to make something else out of it, to lead it into a new future. And I believe in this new future of broadening the idea of the art museum to another kind of art museum, in which there is maybe also some other works to be seen than they used to be seen. We are working on a museum with other hierarchies. We are working on a museum in which highlights are still highlights, but there are many more highlights which tended to be forgotten for a long time. And that is what we're trying to make clear in our new collection displays. And when we will take back our Kirchner works and the Pechstein works and the other works from our collection, which are in the exhibition right now, we take them back with a broadened view about them and with a new perspective on them and with some framing, with some context which we can use in the future at moments it's necessary to use it, and making clear what we want to say. Because we are turning into a kind of a storytelling museum. And art museums are also storytelling museums in the future. That's what I firmly believe. And we're speaking about narratives these days, and we're not speaking about a linear art history anymore, in which we walk from highlight to highlight, but we are working on a kind of a hybrid museum in which everything can all the time find a kind of different and a kind of new place, another place. An otherwise museum. That's exactly your right word. What you're mentioning there.
But if anything else, though, our reason for happily wanting to be a part of this conversation and staging this discussion that is going to happen over the next 2 days was, one, to tie to a longer conversation that has been happening in the Ethnographic Museum around this question of modernity, modernism, and what is at stake in that in relationship to colonialism. So we were interested in that. But we wanted to also place that within the framework of the conversations that are happening today. And what might it mean to think the undoing of institutions and their redoing for another future? We wanted to also place it within, which I think the exhibition does very well, a critical reflection on history, and asking the question about how do we know this history that we've come to know? And what kind of global formations inform this history we've come to know? So you're asking in this exhibition and in this conference, which is a very, very important moment, I think, to deal with this struggle that we have in the Netherlands, but more globally, of judging the past. Very important. And the third,
the past. Yeah.
And the third reason, which is one of the things that I'm struggling with. So I became director of the NMVV recently, and one of the questions that people ask me very often is, now that we know that all of your objects are colonial, can we see their beauty anymore? Can we see them through aesthetic lens? And some people have asked that of your exhibition, and the answer is easy, yes. Because to inhabit that question of aesthetics is also a decolonial project. So in a sense, I'm very excited to extend a longer conversation that has been happening in the Ethnographic Museum together with the Stedelijk at this moment, because we at this moment can say something about this current conjuncture, this current moment in history when we have to think about ourselves anew and what futures we want to sketch.
You're perfectly right in that, Wayne. And I also think when we talk about aesthetics, when we talk about seeing the beauty of beautiful paintings, by Kirchner, by Nolde, and by so many other artists in our collection and in our exhibitions. It's something we want to see in the future also. And we want even to see more beauty. We want even to see more aesthetics in the future. But we have to be clear that we have to rethink aesthetics also in terms of the domain and the borders where aesthetics are stopping and going into another realm, into ethics, for instance. And we are living in different times than we were living in 10 or 20 years ago. And we are living in times in which the aesthetical and the ethical come very much near together, and they touch each other. And the one question brings also the other question, and the focus on the aesthetics brings also the focus on the ethics. That does not mean that we are canceling artists like Kirchner and Nolde. There was just today, there was an article in, I think in The Guardian, on Hogarth by the director of the British Museum. And he was talking about the non-cancellation of Hogarth, because what they're doing is also reframing, and it's not about canceling. Because we will take back those works and show them again in our collection, and we still esteem them as very important artists, but not the only artists of the period they were living in. Art history becomes bigger in a way. And this is a process which we are in since a longer time, since we know that the Jansen, which was the reference point of all us art historians, since we all know that there is no female artist in the Jansen, which we all read and which we all learned by heart in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, when we were studying art history. We know that the framework has changed, and we know that art history is a lot bigger than it used to be. And there we can also partnering up with the ethnographic museums, and we can go for a real change. That does not mean that we will change our collections here at the Stedelijk completely. The same will go for you also probably, but we will take decisively different viewpoints and different attitudes every now and then. And at the same time, we want people to come here and love and see those paintings, those sculptures, those video pieces, those installations, and everything else. Because art still is a lot about beauty. And when we go for beauty into this exhibition, just as an example, we see a lot of beautiful paintings, drawings, aquarels by Kirchner and Nolde. And we see also a lot of beautiful artworks by outer European artists. And I think that's adding up to each other also in this exhibition. And that means that we are asking questions about what is art and what is art history, and how can we today, from a new contemporary perspective, react and reflect on that was and was always, let's say, received in the same kind of way. We need to make a change. We need to make an otherwise museum, which is my favorite term already now, Wayne.
Well, but I won't claim it. But I want to close from my part anyway, by saying thanks for the invitation to be a part of the conversation. During the conversations, it's always a pity that the conversations leading to an exhibition never end up in the exhibition itself. You know, you see an end point, but all of the nice, difficult moments when we even fought each other don't necessarily end up there. But it was a conversation around, not just around art and ethnography. It was a conversation about what forms of exhibitionary techniques do we develop to be able to exhibit this work otherwise? How do we deal with the exhibiting of violence? And what is at stake in that exhibiting violent histories for different kind of publics? Who do we privilege when we open an exhibition like this? Is it the publics that normally come and who feel aggrieved because Kirshner and Nolde have been sullied by the engagement with a broader colonial context? Or are we also hoping to open up the possibility for others to see this exhibition? There's a lovely little book that I just bought and haven't read. It is called On Beauty and Ethics. So we need to read it together. It was about that kind of conversation as well. It was about showing and not showing. And why do we think as museums, things must always be available to the visitor? Some things might be secret. So all of those things were a part of our discussions that are probably hinted at in the exhibition, but not necessarily as robust and capacious. But it is in that we want the discussions to happen over the next 2 years, 2 days, 2 years even. Because it is there with those kinds of conversation that we are able to inaugurate a different kind of institutionality, a different kind of public institution that attends to the fact that the public that we now serve is a little different than the moment when art history and the art institution, when Folkekunde and the Folkekunde institution emerged. And that, I hope, is a part of the critical, uncomfortable, very, very negative, sometimes joyous discussions that are going to happen over the next 2 days. And Beatrice, I just wanted to say to you out there in the sphere that what we laughed at just earlier, that every exhibition is a failure, because its failings, it opens up the possibility of so many things that you have not yet done. But it is also a promise of the work that still needs to be done, because Kirshner and Nolde highlights, and this exhibition highlights an ongoing colonialism that we need to work at. That is the horizon that we are here trying to do today. That was my last word.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And on beauty and ethics is going to be a 1.5 for me. So, because that's the topic I'm also thinking of the last 5 or 6 years myself, and that's part of our times, and it's good that it's part of our times. And we are at another point of time than 6 years ago when you invented the exhibition, and at the same time, we still see that there was development in the concept of the exhibition, but that the core of it was already there 6 years ago. So that's something I'm very happy to be seeing when looking back and when reviewing also the whole project and the whole development of it over the years. I'm very happy that we have those 2 days. I'm looking forward to the contributions. I already thank all the contributors to this symposium very, very much. We have a very interesting lineup, and I'm very proud to have them here today and tomorrow on your screen this time. And then I thank again Beatrice van Boorman and Dorte Agersen for putting up this incredible exhibition. I'm thanking Doreen de Bruin and Alessandra Benedicti for organizing, for thinking this symposium, which is called Rethinking Kirchner and Nolde. There was a lot of thinking done for this, and thank you very much. And I thank the Goethe Institute for their support for this symposium. Very good partners for us all the time. And again, I thank all your museums, Wayne, and also the Institute of Material Culture. And I'm very happy that we stepped into this exhibition project together, and that we also stepped into this symposium project together. And I think that in a few minutes from now, the online tour will start. I'm not going to witness it because I go for the real thing, but we are still privileged here in Amsterdam, Wayne, and that is sometimes good to know. Yeah. At the other side, it's something you also always have to be critical with also. And going for other audiences and new publics and broadening up, widening up, that's something we are working on for the next years. Thank you so much.
Thank you.